Hey, it's Bryan with DD214 Transport. Please like, subscribe, hit the little bell for notifications. Welcome to the house. We are here, and we have a great show for you guys today. Guys, we've got an interview tonight with a business owner and driver. His name is Robert. He is one of the 10% that actually makes it through the first year. If you think this job is tough, 90% of the people don't make it this far. Okay. So I'm super excited to talk to Robert, and we got a ton of questions. We're going to let you ask him questions. And before we get too far down the rabbit hole, though, well, let me tell you what I did today. I was goofing around here and reset my computer because we had a thunderstorm and I didn't bring my presentation up. Can you believe it? That is insane. So there it is. There's our lease on information. All right. Before we get too far, we're going to thank our veterans and first responders for all they do and all they continue to do for this country. We would not be the country we are without them. Thank you. All right, guys, here we go. We're going to start this. Now, if you have questions, Robert has graciously agreed to stay a little later after we get done with all my questions to answer any questions you may have. Okay, so if you come across the question and go ahead and type them up and put them in there so that everybody can, or you'll be ready for it and Mila can put it on the stage and everybody can read it. So without further ado, I want to bring in Mr. Robert. Hey, Mr. Robert.
Hello.
You to the show. How you doing?
Doing well, doing well. It sounds like you're doing pretty good. Sorry about your visit to the ER. That's no fun.
Yeah, it's no fun, but it is what it is. It happens, and just so happened to happen to me this time. Yeah. So, you're here. You're one of the 10% club, man. You're 10% of what actually makes it through the first 12 months. You got a big pat on your back.
Well, thank you.
And, so let me just throw this at you real quick with what made you think of getting into Hotshot? Tell me a little bit about you.
Well, I've had several careers in my lifetime, and being an entrepreneur and being a student of entrepreneurship is something that I've done for a long, long time. And so in looking for opportunities, when you do have an entrepreneurial spirit, you're constantly searching for something you can do to kind of check all the boxes that to help gain satisfaction. And Hotshot Trucking just kind of did that for me. And, I put together a business plan. The numbers appeared to be viable. And, it was relatively minimal investment compared to a lot of businesses that a person could start, but it is still very substantial, and that's very important. And then I also looked at my capabilities. I had earned or worked toward getting my commercial driver's license, I think sometime around 2012, and I utilized it very heavily for 4 or 5 years, working in the oil field out in West Texas. And then at COVID and everything, I moved away from that, but I continued to maintain the commercial driver's license by doing the medical certificate every 2 years so that I didn't have to get back in the truck and retest. Always kind of having it in the back of my mind that it kind of could be a fallback plan if what I was doing at that time didn't work out. And anyway, maintaining that commercial driver's license was something that really helped me get into Hotshot because, there's differentiation involved, and this business is not about buying a truck and getting a trailer and start hauling stuff. It's a lot more complicated than that. And having the commercial driver's license is something that, since I already had it, I knew it would be something I wouldn't have to work to go get. And that's not the easiest thing to do.
Right,
so
right.
When I looked at all those characteristics and my qualifications, what the world of Hotshot could be in hauling freight, I pretty much had a good idea of what it would be. But I also said, well, if I don't do this, I'll probably be wondering, what is this ever going to be like? And, after 12 months, I'm still learning, but I've got, a pretty good handle on what the business is about.
Right. Right. So how did you break into the industry? If somebody wants to break into the industry, how would you tell them to do it?
Well, the first thing you need to do is make sure your personal finances are in order. I would not recommend getting into this business to try to straighten out your personal finances. Right. I think that, you need to have capital. You need to have seed capital to get going. It's going to take somewhere between 125 and 150,000 for you to be able to do what you need to do to get it done. Now, having said that, I understand people are going to say, well, you don't really have to have that much money and this, that, and the other. But once you start driving and you get behind the wheel, the last thing you need to be worried about is whether when you have a breakdown, are you going to have the funds to continue to roll? Right. And if you don't have some savings and financially you can't absorb those instances, then your cash flow will bring you to a halt. Right. And that's pretty important to know. And I am a student of entrepreneurship, and I don't know what the exact statistic is, but many businesses fail within 12 months or because of lack of funding. Right. And so it's very important that you have your finances worked out and that you're able to stay agile with regard to that, because it will take you out of the game pretty quick.
Yeah. So this is one I'm kind of anxious to hear, and this is, what was your first year like compared to what you thought it would be?
Well, having worked out in West Texas where conditions can be pretty harsh, and I was working for a service company, hands-on in the oil field, and I working with equipment there, and I always said to myself and everybody, I said, guys, we're in the equipment maintenance business, and when everything runs right, we get to go do what we're supposed to do and earn money. And so my expectation about the business is similar to that. You have equipment, a truck and a trailer. It's limited, not millions of dollars worth of equipment. But if you have the mindset that you're not going to maintain your equipment, and it's not going to work out for you. I expected for there to be times when I was going to have to personally work on all of my equipment, my truck and my trailer. And that has come true, but that was my expectation going in. So that has pretty much met expectation, but that's based on experience of having been in a business where equipment maintenance and equipment heavy business is extremely important. And I talk to a good friend of mine frequently, and his deal is if you don't schedule maintenance will schedule itself.
That's right.
and that
right. That absolutely,
that when maintenance schedules itself, it's probably on the side of a highway with cars going by at unthinkable speeds, and it's just not safe. So, that's what the business is about. If everything's running right, you get to go pick up loads, deliver loads, and make some money. If things aren't running right, you're instantly paralyzed and stop. And that's not where you want to be. It is extremely expensive when you have an equipment failure and someone has to come rescue.
Right. So, yeah, you've been involved in a few rescues.
I have,
Yourself.
and fortunately for me to date, I've been the rescuer and not
Yes.
the rescuee. But it's still not, it's not a fun situation for anybody to be in.
Right.
And but my expectations for the business were that, the one thing that probably has not really met expectation, I don't know how or why, but for some reason I was thinking that I would be able to kind of be on a set schedule, and that I could kind of like when I was in the oil field, where I'd be like gone for 2 weeks and home a week. And it even though I can schedule myself to do those things, it's very difficult to balance how much time you spend on the road and how much time you're going to be at home.
Right.
Because being at home obviously is extremely important, but if the wheels aren't rolling, you're not generating
those bills
revenue.
don't stop. That's the big thing there. The bills to keep coming.
Yeah, the bills keep coming. And the big one, while you don't have the, if you're not running, you don't have the fuel expense, and that's fine. But you've still got, if you're making a truck payment, you've still got the truck payment, you've still got the trailer payment, you've still got insurance. And when you're not generating revenue and you have those invoices come in, which gets back to the financial stability, it can be very punishing, and it can be very stressful, because if you're at home and you feel like you're just don't have enough money to make it through a week being at home, that can wear on you mentally while you're at home trying to relax.
Sure.
And then it's not good for anybody, because your family feels that tension and everything else.
So let's talk about the day-to-day grind. And this is something that a lot of people I talk to really don't realize what happens day to day. And, walk us through a typical day in the life of a hotshot driver.
Well, it's a loaded question, Bryan, because there's really not a typical day. But what I would do is I would take a moment to describe to me what would be the ideal day. And I've probably had 10 or 12 of those over the past year.
Okay.
And the ideal day is it's a little staged, because you've got work that you did the previous day that sets you up properly for the next day. So, but if you start in the morning, you're getting up at usually sometime between 6 and 8 a.m. Okay. Depending on how your schedule has got you to that day.
Mm-hmm.
And usually, if it's an ideal day, I'm usually in my sleeper at the location where the receiver who I spoke to the day before has said you can park here overnight. And then, so I'm kind of up and about. Maybe if I feel like going to grab some breakfast, go grab some breakfast. If I'm up at 6, they've said receiving hours are 7 to 3. So I run and get some breakfast, usually walk. I don't detach my truck from my trailer or anything like that. And I never try to drive my load to go get breakfast. So I will leave my truck there, walk and get some breakfast, which is important because you need to maintain a certain level of exercise when you do this.
Right.
And then I'll, when I get back, I'll kind of look at what the receiver has going on and make sure that those guys are in there moving like we had talked about the previous day. And then I'll start I'll start my clock and I'll do my pre-trip. And then when I'm walking through my pre-trip, which is a required document, I will, in our software and everything, there's a timer in there. So if you start your clock and you start driving, it's going to be like, well, wait a minute, how long did you spend doing a pre-trip? Because you can't do an effective pre-trip in, 60 seconds.
Right.
So start the clock, do the pre-trip. The clock is running on the timer for the document in the software. Legitimately walk around, do your pre-trip, check everything that's on the list. Major one being tires, making sure you don't have a flat or something like that. And then once you finish your pre-trip, change over on your clock, document that, and then you head on into the receiver. who hopefully you've already worked it out. The guy running the forklift or whatever is there. He unloads you. And then from the previous day, hopefully you have a rate confirmation for where you're going to be going to after you've unloaded, if everything's going well. So you then have that address while they're unloading you. You're kind of paying attention to that. And you're also making sure your straps and your tarps or whatever are stored properly and secured. And then you've already got the address for where you're going to pick up plugged into your GPS, and then you get after your deadhead immediately. And once you're en route to your pickup location, who you've hopefully already talked to once you got the rate confirmation. But if you haven't, you call them immediately and say, give them an ETA. So you're communicating with the people on the ground who are going to be there for you to load your trailer, and make sure that they're in tune with you. I'm going to be there at 10 a.m. I'm going to be there at 11:30, and keep them informed. If you run into a delay, let them know, because communication is key. So then you arrive at your pickup, hopefully probably before noon. And then you get loaded, and then you start carrying that load towards the drop-off. And there's some days when you might be able to make it to the drop-off. Many days you're driving, and as soon as you start driving, you're figuring out, where am I going to be? How many drive hours do I have left? And what is my location going to be when I get to the end of that drive time, so that you can start to pre-plan where you're going to stay that night. If you want to stay in a hotel, fine. If you want to, or I have a sleeper on my truck to save on hotel bills. So it's a little easier. I say it's easier. There have been times when it's not easy to find a place to sleep, but right. If you do pre-plan from that, at that point, then you can end up in a good spot. And then once, either that same day or the next morning, you're driving to finish that load to the receiver, and then they're unloading you. Well, at the end of your day, of course, you're leaving enough time on your clock to do a post-trip inspection, which is also required, same type of deal. And you have to document that. So you do your post-trip inspection, and then the next morning you're doing your pre-trip again, and then you're making it to your receiver and you're dropping off the load. And then that's kind of a standard day. It's kind of rinse and repeat. But there's all kinds of factors that play into a less than ideal day.
Yeah. So tell me, how do you mentally prepare for the long hours on the road?
Well, with technology and the ease of communication, being hands-free and everything, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about the fact that I'm going to be driving for 11 hours every day. When you get in, before you drive, if you've never driven and gotten paid to drive like that, it seems like it can be very daunting. But there's so many things going on, and there's so much you have to pay attention to. And if you're going to be efficient in what you're doing, you have to be constantly adjusting your plan. So there's not a lot of time to be wrapped up in your head about, oh my God, I'm fixing to drive for 11 hours.
Yeah.
Because you're constantly thinking of, where am I going to be? What am I doing? When's the next contract coming in? How much fuel do I have in my truck? Where am I going to stop for fuel? Is the price of fuel where I'm planning on stopping a good deal? Is it overpriced there? And with technology today, all those things can be worked out ahead of time.
Right.
And so, so you kind of end up working through that on the fly, and it really makes the work day like a work day. I mean,
yeah,
you're not, it's not really, I'm out in the middle of nowhere driving for, 11 hours straight. Well, first of all, I can't do that. Max you could ever drive straight is 8 hours without getting out of the seat, which doesn't happen very often.
Right. Well, I tell people, never mind. Let's just skip that. So let's jump over here behind the wheel. Challenges and triumphs. Okay. Now, what has been your most challenging load to date, and how did you handle it?
Well, there's two that come to mind, but when one of them has to do with the type of the load. You know, you would think that over time, when the rate confirmation comes in, and you can get a grasp on what it is that you're going to be hauling. And sometimes it'll just say something like commodity or building material or machinery or whatever. And so you make an agreement to haul this load, and you're contractually obligated to pick it up at point A and deliver it to point B. And when you get to point A to pick it up, you look at it and go, well, I guess the contract could be interpreted that way. But in this particular instance, it was basically as many pieces of industrial woodworking equipment as they could fit on my trailer.
Oh, wow.
And it was probably 15 individual, between lathes and drill presses and miter machines. And there was a lot. And each piece of equipment weighed, between 500 and 1,500 pounds, depending on what it was. Mm-hmm. But regardless, each piece had to be strapped down with at least 2 straps. And then you also have the sharp edges. So each piece probably needed, strap protectors on it. And that proved to be very challenging, getting that all strapped down. And then, of course, it had to be tarped. And, you can picture back here, there's 3 or 4 pieces that are sticking up 3 or 4 feet higher than the main part of the load, and the same thing up front. And so if you don't put moving blankets on all that stuff, you're just going to rip your tarps to shreds. And if you don't take the time to do that, you'll regret it later, because tarps are expensive, and you're watching your bottom line, and every expense is an expense that if you were trying to justify it to somebody else, would you be able to justify, well, I need a new, $400 tarp because that one load ripped it to shreds.
Right.
So I spent probably 2.5 or 3 hours, trying to prep that load to make sure that it wasn't going to fall off, it wasn't going to destroy my tarps, and it wasn't going to get wet. Yeah. And that's not easy work. It's very, it's physically demanding. The tarps weigh well in excess of 100 pounds when they're rolled up. And it's just, and you have to lift them up high to get them up on the equipment. And so loads like that was very, very challenging.
Tell us about a time when something went wrong. Equipment failure.
So it was a pretty standard load. It was like 12,000 pounds of steel building material. I can't remember if I think it was square tubing or rectangular tubing. And I was headed out of Chicago with it. And I was on the phone with my dad, and I said, oh, shoot, I just had a blowout, so I got to go. And I looked to my left, and here goes one of my tires passing me on the interstate. And I was like, well, it was more than a blowout. I've lost some wheels. And I didn't know where they came from or what the situation was, but I was in the center lane, traffic in 3 full lanes. It was dark outside. I think it was 7 or 8 o'clock. So it was medium traffic. I wouldn't say it was heavy. So I just turned on my hazards immediately. In my rearview mirror, I could see the sparks flying out from under the truck, and I worked my way over
rear dually
to the shoulder. Yeah, and what had happened was I'd had my tires rotated the week before, and it's one of those things where it's like, well, you're supposed to stop and check your lugs, 100 miles after you get going. Okay, well, I did that, but in this particular instance, I'm not sure if I had a flat on the inside dual or not. I couldn't really ever tell. But the wheels started to shimmy, and it broke off every lug nut on that axle. And so both tires came off the truck. The one of them came to rest on the inside concrete barrier, and the other one that was passing me changed lanes and went off. Fortunately, it didn't hit anybody, and it went off the road and it went through bar ditch, and I saw it hop about 15 or 20 feet in the air, and it went over a fence and landed. And I was when I was waiting for the tow truck, I recovered that wheel, and there was actually nothing wrong with that one.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And
you lucked out on that one.
Very much so. Very much so. And while it was an unfortunate accident, I feel very fortunate for no one to have been injured.
Right.
And, and then the reason that in and of itself is challenging, and dealing with the logistics of being on the side of the road. It was snowing a little bit. And, so visibility was low, and it was dark and cold. Fingers are hurting.
That goes into this question, and I think the answer is yes. Have you ever felt unsafe on the road? I would say right there, you should have felt unsafe.
Right there was pretty tough. I went back and I made sure and put on my safety vest so that the reflections of the headlights, they'd see me. Of course, I put out my triangles immediately, and I never had an officer stop, but I called a tow truck company. That was a challenge because they couldn't tow the truck with the trailer. We had to disconnect the trailer. So it was 2 tow trucks, one for the truck, one for the trailer. Not inexpensive.
Right.
But, and then the next challenge starts whenever you start trying to get somebody to fix the truck. Couldn't find it. People were like 3-4 days. I can't wait that long. I've got a load. It's expensive for the load to be rescued. So I did the repair myself. I found a new rotor, took the whole thing apart, pulled the axle out, so forth and so on, put it all back together, and was able to make the delivery. It was a little bit, but I kept dispatch informed, and I kept you informed, Bryan, also along the way. Let you guys know this is my expectation. Absolutely. Don't send a rescue truck yet. I've got all the parts located. I'm going to get them on the truck by the end of the day tomorrow, and I'll be back on the road the next morning. And that's what happened. I think I was rolling again within 24 hours, which that's not, it's
not bad. That's pretty good considering the circumstances and where you were at.
Yeah.
Now, business mindset and money. Let's talk a little bit about that. Okay.
Okay.
I'm not expecting you to get into numbers. I don't, because that's your private business. But is Hotshot trucking as profitable as people think?
I think there's hype that makes it seem more profitable than it really is. There's a lot of factors, as you've said, and the thing about it is you're in business for yourself. So, because you're in business for yourself and you're monitoring your expenses and your revenue, it's a little easier for you to make decisions about what needs to be purchased and what doesn't need to be purchased. But like I said earlier, if it's not a get rich quick thing, like at all, if you don't have staying power, the financial resources to absorb repairs like the one I was just talking about, you're not going to make it. And that's very important for people to realize before they try to get into it.
Well, how do you manage your expenses, maintenance, and downtime without bleeding cash?
Well, one of the most important things you can do is set up some good controls, which I'm probably okay at. I'm probably not the best at it, but you need to have an account that is set up specifically for this business. Okay. And you need to monitor that account on a regular basis. And if you don't have enough cash to make sure that those payments we talked about earlier, during your time off, you either need to have another source of cash where you can deposit money into that account, or you need to stay on the road and make money. And that doesn't always bode well with your schedule and your family. Right. And so that's why there's a balance there. And you have to be prepared to put some more money. If your cash flow hasn't generated enough revenue to get through the week off, then you're going to have to keep driving and get and earn more revenue until that checking account balance is high enough to sustain the expenses that you have for the following week that you want to take off.
Right. Now, here's a big one for the guys out there that's thinking about this industry. What's the one financial mistake you made early on that other drivers should avoid?
Well, the
If
thing,
any, maybe you didn't.
well, the thing is it's not exactly provable. But if I had it to do again, I probably would have purchased a new truck, and not, like you always say, Bryan, it should be a truck that's a work truck, not a platinum, not, I'm going to spend all my time in here, I'm going to go get all the bells and whistles. Well, all those bells and whistles are exactly what creates downtime.
Right.
Because
That's right.
if you have all that extra, you need a power block, a transmission, a rear axle, and you have to be able to steer the thing.
Yeah.
That's really what you need to do this, effectively. And I mean, air conditioning is nice, but the point is that this is a business, it's work. And the more expenses you have that are not directly related to generating revenue, the more difficult it's going to be for you to endure and persevere, because it's the expenses will come. It's not buy a truck and trailer. Oh, it's going to be great. The truck's going to last forever. The trailer's going to last forever. No. We've seen one of the guys I rescued, brand new trailer problem. It happens with new stuff. It happens with old stuff. But I would say that financially, as much money as I've spent on repairs and keeping my truck running, I wish that I had bought just a hardcore new truck and bought it as cheaply as I possibly could, that would tow the freight with a good degree of fuel efficiency.
Yeah.
That's because, like you always say, fuel is the number one expense. And if you don't get something that's going to be fuel efficient, the fuel cost is going to eat you alive. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's move to compliance, safety, and DOT inspections. So how do you stay compliant other than me? How do you stay compliant with DOT and FMCSA regulations while you keep things moving?
Well, first you have to be familiar with what they are, and it is possible to get into this business and not fully understand what the rules and regulations are. Just because you go out and get your CDL, that's not a precursor for, you understand everything that you need to do in order to be legal.
Absolutely.
And that's an important thing. It's like, okay, you've got the license. Now you have to execute, you have to implement, and there are changes in the laws and so forth and so on. But I'm very practical when it comes to that. And I like to think that I have some degree of empathy where I can see things from different points of view. And so the compliance issues are not there to try and beat us down.
Right.
Okay. That the whole point is, you're on the road as a professional with a very large, very heavy piece of equipment, not the largest and not the heaviest, but still much larger and much heavier than 95% of the vehicles that are right next to you.
Right.
And they're being driven by sometimes 16-year-olds that just started driving, have no experience. And so the laws are in place to try and help those two extreme groups, the heaviest and the lightest transportation people, share the same space on the same road.
Mm-hmm.
And so the laws have been created to attempt to bridge that gap. And granted, the laws are not there to maximize your revenue. They're not there to make sure that every personal vehicle that's on the road never sustains damage or gets in an accident. so there's somewhere between those things is where we live.
Right.
And we have to maintain safety. And so when I think about DOT compliance, I try to frame it in that so that it's more palatable, because you're driving along, you're going to make your deadline, you've talked to the receiver, you're going to drop off the load, and oh my gosh, here comes a wait station, and oh my gosh, there's 15 trucks in line, and I'm going to run out of time, and I'm not going to make my delivery, and I told them I'd be there, and then you get flagged for, even if it's just a level 1 roadside stop, you're talking about an hour and a half. I mean, maybe it's less than that for some people. That's just been my experience. I had a level 1, it was an hour and a half. And so then it delays you. And so there's frustration that's created. And the absolutely thing that you cannot do is direct that frustration at the officer that's performing your inspection.
Right.
If you do that,
it's not going to help you.
It's not going to help you at all.
Yeah.
And so the way that you remain compliant is you make sure your equipment is in working order. Don't give them a thing that they can find to put you out of service. Do everything during your pre-trip the way you're supposed to do it. Do the inspections during your post trips, and make sure that you don't have a flat tire that you don't know about, and you start rolling in the morning and you've actually got a flat tire. Bad news.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. How many times have I said on here, you can deal with that flat tire in that parking lot a hell of a lot easier than you can in a DOT out of service area.
Hands down. And then the out of service is not something that just affects me as an individual. If I were to be put out of service, which thankfully, knock on wood, I have not been put out of service. And because that goes against, if you're leased on with somebody, that goes against, or if you have your own MC number, it doesn't really matter. That goes on your record.
Absolutely.
And enough of those, and you become, your insurance rates go up. It's a mess. So,
yeah. All right. Tech and trucks. Let's do this. Tech and trucks. What kind of rig do you run, and why did you choose it?
So I have a 2019 Ram 5500. It had 93,000 miles on it when I bought it. It's in the first year now. It's got about 180,000 miles on it. And it's been a challenge. I wanted the cabin chassis because I really there's a couple reasons. Number one, I wanted to put a sleeper on it. So I thought, why would I buy a truck that has a bed only to remove the bed, and then I'd have to get rid of that bed or store it? I didn't want to do any of that. So I found a cabin chassis, put a DOT approved sleeper on it, because I just instinctively, I kind of knew that hotel bills would be something that would take right off your bottom line. Can you do it staying in hotels? Yes. But I mean, think about that, even if you got a hotel room for $50 a night, which those places are not real nice. But if you were to do that, by the end of the week, you've got an extra $250 in hotel bills. So the DOT sleeper was something that I knew I wanted to do. And then the other thing for me was I just wanted some toolboxes that were around the outside of the truck, so that I didn't have to be reaching up into the bed to get stuff that I needed and so forth. And so I was able to kind of fashion my toolboxes the way I wanted on the cabin chassis. So that's really why I went with the cabin chassis. I watched a lot of videos on trucks, and I just settled on that year, that make, that model. The studies that I did said the transmission was good. That engine was good, the 6.7 liter. And so that's how I chose it.
Well, let me ask you this. What apps, tools, or gadgets are game changers that you use in your truck while you're on the road?
Well, for me, the two main things are the iPad and the cameras. Now, of course, I have the front-facing cameras for the insurance and stuff, but the camera that is used overwhelmingly the most is the back right. When you're making corners and you're turning right with that 40-foot trailer, it's having the camera there. And I spent a lot of time kind of designing the inside of my truck. I built this rack for the camera monitor to go on and for my iPad to go on. My phone mounts below on it. I mean, that's probably not normal, but I did spend a lot of time and I put a lot of thought into that because I didn't want it to be cumbersome to interact with that equipment. There's enough distractions without having to try to, one, hold your phone, which I would never do. And then I wanted a larger screen with my directions on it. That's why I put an iPad up, but also keeping in mind that it's below the line of sight for the dashboard. So it's not like it's up high. And when I look to the right, I can't see out my windshield. That's pretty important to me.
Right.
And, but the iPad with the directions on it, it's just, to me, it's easier to see, a little easier to interact with than a smaller screen on the phone. So that works well for me. And then that camera, which is on a, I think it's like a 6x8 little monitor that's there. And with the technology they put in those cameras now, it's high definition. I mean, you can clearly see if there's something on your right that you missed before you made the corner, and be it a telephone pole or just a concrete pillar or whatever it might be, or just the curb, and it really helps you protect your equipment by not running up on curbs and then of course not by not causing any damage to any property and getting those calls later. So really that camera is a huge saver. Like, take the time to put it on the trailer in the right position so that when you're sitting in the cab, you're not relying on that rear view mirror. And
now, is that a wireless camera setup you put up?
No, I ran a wire. So every time I disconnect the trailer, I have to unscrew that wire.
Gotcha.
But it's saved me from, look, if you've been driving for 20 years and you think you can do it without a camera there, great, go do it. But with the technology today, it's so easy to put it in there, that it's just like, why would you not? It's a great rear view mirror that stays fixed, and you know what you're looking at there. And it actually can help in heavy traffic because you can look down there and see if there's anybody in your blind spot. So
gotcha. Yeah. So I'm sure a lot of guys are wanting to hear this. So we're going to skip down to advice for new drivers. From one of the 10% club here, we have advice. What would you tell someone who is thinking about jumping into the hotshot trucking industry tomorrow?
If you don't have your personal finances in order, don't do it. I mean, that's it. If you're going to try to do this because you've got a bunch of debt and you think you're going to make a bunch of money and pay off debt, it's probably not going to pan out for you. It's going to take a while before you start generating enough revenue to stockpile cash. Right. So you need to make sure your personal finances are in order. And then, it's kind of a crapshoot when it comes to buying a truck. If you want to buy a new truck, great, buy a new truck.
Buy it right.
Yeah.
Buy it right, man.
Yes, you got to buy it right. You can't be spending a lot of money on features that really are going to be too cumbersome. They're going to get in the way. So that would be the number one thing I would say. And then the other thing would be, okay, if you've got a trailer, or if you've had a trailer, that's great. But if you're going to buy a trailer, take the time to go visit with the person, with the company that you're buying the trailer from. And I'm not talking about the sales guy, the 22-year-old or whatever, who's trying to make a bunch of money selling trailers. I mean, you need to maybe even go to the manufacturing facility or go talk to the people who are putting the trailer together and understand how your trailer works. You need to know how your truck works. You need to know how your trailer works. You need to know what the scheduled preventative maintenance items are. And you need to keep track of those things and make sure that you respect that, because I mean, I hate to say it, but there's been a couple things that I've driven long distances, and it's kind of like, well, you should have known better, settings in the truck, things about the trailer. And so it's like, yeah, you learn those things over time. But if you take the time to really study how your trailer's made and how it works and what the maintenance items are, you will just be ahead so that when maintenance needs to occur, you're ready for it and you know what to do.
Very good. So what's the one thing no one told you, including me, that you wish you'd known on day one? By the way, I'm putting this in my notes so I know to add it to my booklet.
Okay. I'd say the one thing is, it's tough to narrow in on one thing, but I would say that, you're as much as you want your schedule to be yours and you're an entrepreneur and you're in business for yourself, you're the guy or gal that has to do everything. And that can be very taxing. So, if you don't know that going in, you're not going to be able to necessarily control your schedule. And I think that's something that, people need to realize. It's like, you can budget all day long for being on the road this many days and coming home, but I can't tell you how many times I've said, well, I'll be home, and then something happens and it's like, okay, I won't be home this week, but I'll be home the following week. And that's difficult.
Yeah, it is. And it's one of those things that, until you're in the industry, you don't put it together. When I tell people, you're the first to show up, you're the last to leave, and you're the last to get paid. That's what being your own boss means.
Yeah.
And that's just God honest truth.
Yeah.
So,
and I've been aware of that from having been a business owner in the past. And so that really queued me up well for this, because if you've never run your own business, that's what it is. It's a business, and you are your own employee. You're responsible for everything. And until you get enough cash flow going, it can be very restrictive.
Right. All right. Now, what do you think separates a successful driver and business owner from one that just burns out?
Oh, I think you have to read the room when you're home with your family. If you don't have a good support network and your wife doesn't support what you're doing, and you have people around you that are telling you like, well, why would you want to do that? And, instead of being, yeah, I think you can make this work, and I've been very fortunate to have an extremely supportive network of people, friends and family that have made it viable for me. And that's probably how people get burnt out, because if you don't have anybody at the house that can step up and take care of things that you were previously doing, that's going to be very difficult on you.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, let's jump down to some real talk and some personal insights. And have you thought about quitting? Have you got to a point when you thought, it's just,
I can tell you for sure. When I was standing there in the snow with my fingers frozen, looking at the two wheels having come off the back of my truck, I was 3 months in or whenever it was.
Right.
I'm done. But you persevere. And, but the thing is that any career that I've had, which has been several, there are moments, there's always those moments where you're fed up and you're ready to go do something else. And you just want to throw in the towel. And, one day you reach a point and you make a decision and you end up quitting. I'm not there yet with this, could it happen? Yeah. Anything could happen, but, so far, and I've met people that say luck has nothing to do with it. And I'm here to tell you that's absolutely not true. If you just have one bad luck instance after another, it'll eat you alive. So the point is that if you're unlucky, you have to be prepared enough to persevere through that. I considered the wheels falling off to be unlucky. That was just, I don't know what happened. I don't know if the person rotating the tires tightened the lugs down too much. I don't know if I had a it was a flat tire that I just couldn't feel for the longest time. And there was no cars going by honking their horns or saying anything to me. I never saw anything in the rearview mirror. It was unlucky.
So what does success look like to you, both on and off the road? How do you see
success is it's a little bit ambiguous, because it's in this business, and I'm getting close to probably trying to take something to the next level. But in this business, what are you creating to try and build wealth? And that's not an easy concept to grasp, especially when you're your own truck, your own trailer, and you're driving it yourself and you're doing things. But these things take time, and the experience of doing it takes time, so that when you do get ready to go to the next level, you have credibility and people will understand.
And you're making a great point that it takes time, because you can't learn this business in a day, a week, a month, 10 months, a year. I've been doing it over a decade, and I learn stuff every single day.
Yeah.
Because there's so much to it, and it's ever changing. Yeah. So it's constantly evolving. And you make a really good point, Robert. You do. And I think people should take note of what you just said. I think that's a very important statement you just made. And I thank you for making it.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's the way I see it.
Relationships. Here's a tough one. Relationships on and off the road. I will say this: out of everybody I've seen that's got into this, most of them have failed due to relationship, the family not supporting them, or being on different tracks. So how's trucking, Hotshot trucking, impacted your relationships back home?
Well, it creates challenges, and it's not easy to be halfway across the country and something goes on at the house that if I was at the house, I could just fix. And that's why it's important that everybody's on board and that those things are understood.
You have backup people?
Yeah, I have I have a few backup people. Yeah. There's a few resources there. That's a good point. That neighbors and stuff that I could call if necessary. That's a very important point. But still, when I'm not here to be the head of the household, my wife's here to be the head of the household, and that job in and of itself has its challenges. Sure. So, again, it's important that you have somebody that can do those things. And, as far as relationships on the road, I mean, one thing about being on the road that's a pro from a personal relationship standpoint is you'd have to maybe ask my wife, but I think 95% of the time when she calls, I'm able to answer the phone. Other careers and jobs I've had in the past, when I worked in the oil field, there was basically zero communication from the time you get in the truck to go to the lease. You might get a phone call in there, and then there's 12-hour shift you're working, and there's no communication. You're out. You may be out somewhere where there's no cell service.
All right.
I know that was a while back, but nonetheless, if you're driving, you can be attentive to what's going on at home, and you can help out, even if it's just to make some phone calls. And it's like, okay, hon, I know you're working today, so let me call the propane company and make sure that they're on target to deliver that next load of propane for the house or whatever.
Yeah.
And you have to be willing to help with a lot of things, even though you're not physically there. Right. You do make yourself available, for phone calls pretty much any time.
Now, do you think people really understand the sacrifice that it takes to run a business like this.
No,
Because you know, I tell people it's not a job change, it's not a career change, it's a lifestyle change. Would you agree with that?
wholeheartedly. It is a lifestyle, and if you are not, if you're not prepared to do the things that we've talked about, constantly traveling, constantly away, being able to be flexible with your time when you are home. I mean, like to budget time to be home. If something happens, you have a breakdown, you can't make it, whatever the case might be. If you don't have the flexibility and the understanding with your personal network of people, then that's going to be more than likely that's going to become insurmountable, and that would cause a change. You know, you have to get out. And so you have to do things. You have to, as much as I say you can't plan, you do. Just having a plan can help, even though the plan's got to change.
Right.
It can still help to have a plan. Okay, I didn't see you this weekend because of this, but I'm going to be home a week from today, or Friday, whatever, and then I'll be home for that weekend, the whole following week, and the following weekend, and then I'm planning on hitting the road. And so you communicate about those things. And that can help. But having somebody who can actually perform, the tasks that need to be done, or having somebody, that they know that can be lined up to help out. It's
right.
It's very important.
Right. So as we move down our board here, let's talk about dispatch, brokers, load boards. Some of that stuff you deal with, some of it you don't in your current situation. But what is your biggest gripe about your dispatchers or your brokers, and how do you deal with it?
Honestly, the dispatch is where the magic happens to me. I mean, I know those guys do a great job dispatching, and very, very rarely have I been in situations where I've been frustrated with dispatch. It has happened a couple times, but I realize people can make mistakes. Sure. And if I drove 100 miles out of my way because dispatch made a mistake, if it happens once or twice, it's like, okay, I get it. And then you and I have had those conversations, Bryan. But, you have to have empathy. These people are working for you. They are working hard, and 98% of the time or better, they are getting it right. And it's like, that speaks volumes, because if you don't have a good dispatch team, you're sunk.
Yeah.
And they are constantly combing boards, looking at where I am, setting me up to get the next load. And I can tell you, I really don't want to have anything to do with all that. I mean, it would be a very difficult job to do that, because, and those guys are great. I love the dispatch team. I do. So, and they do a great job.
Have you ever had to just walk away from a load that it just wasn't going to work, or it was just being, the broker was being too difficult, or what was the breaking point that made you walk away from a load, if you had to?
I haven't walked away from a load. I'm very meticulous about checking the rate confirmation as soon as I get it. And if I see a red flag in the rate confirmation, that's another great thing about the iPad, because if you're going to pull over and read a contract and go through that paperwork, and you're trying to look at it on a little bitty screen like this,
right,
it can be difficult. So the iPad mounted where I have it, I can easily zip into a rest stop or some other place off the road safely, pull up that rate confirmation that was just sent to me, peruse through it, look for the high points. If I have any questions, get back to them. And those things are, that's pinnacle. If you don't read the contract, and you show up and the load is per the contract and you try to refuse it, you had a chance.
On you.
That's on you. Yeah. So I've been very fortunate, because but I also tend to give a little pushback on loads that I don't think are paying enough.
Right.
That does happen. It doesn't happen very often, but still I'll do that.
Absolutely. Yep.
But the next thing in that topic, the broker.
Yes, please.
Okay. I'm going to say civil. I'm going to stay civil. Okay. The best thing that could happen in the freight brokerage business, is to figure out transparency. I have zero faith that what the broker is presenting is the deal. And I don't like that. I'm not saying people shouldn't be entitled to make a living. I'm not saying that. But the way I understand the system and the way that it works, I wish that the brokers were more transparent with regard to the fee that the shipper was paying, and or whoever's paying for it.
Right.
And whoever called the broker and said, I'm going to pay this much to take this load from here to there. And then the broker ends up posting it on the board. And I understand that I have every opportunity to refuse that load. I'm not taking it. You're not paying enough money. I get that. It just can rub a person the wrong way.
Right.
If you think that if you find out in some way, shape, or form that the load is paying $2,000 and you're only collecting 1,000 of it, and the broker's getting that much money, it's like, for what? That's, I mean, okay, because they were able to camouflage whatever it was for whoever was booking that load, and now I'm the guy that's doing the work.
Right.
That's the nature of business, and I understand. And there may be a broker watching this somewhere like, well, he has no right. You're right. I mean, the business has evolved to what it is. The question is, what's your biggest gripe with brokers? The answer is lack of transparency.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So this next little line of questioning is going to be kind of weird, because I'm going to ask you questions about working with us, and speak your mind. And it's working with DD214 Transport. The first thing is how'd you come to work with us? Well, what was the story behind that?
I mean, in this day and time, the internet, a lot of information out there about a lot of different topics. After you research Hotshot trucking for a month on the internet, there starts to be kind of the cream of the crop starts to float to the top, because you watch one video about some guy who's saying that, well, the EPA is not making you do this anymore, or, you can run through Ohio. They've closed all their weight stations. You're good to go. And it's like, no. And you realize that all that stuff is just bunk. And you start to see who is credible. So then ultimately I made the decision, I'm going to call this guy. I've watched his show a couple weeks in a row. He's very consistent. And there's a phone number that comes up on the screen. And honestly, when I called and you answered, you yourself, Bryan, answered, I was like, that's Bryan. That's not some other person that's going to, do some kind of preview. And, well, do you have your CD? Ask me a list of questions. Bryan answers the phone. And it's like, okay, I'm talking to the man. So walk me through this. And then you did. And I could not find one piece of information that you gave me that wasn't credible. I mean, everything that you talk about with regard to, equipment and everything. I mean, yeah, there's opinions to be had, and there's things, but when you break down the process of what you have to do to break out into this business, having a mentor that can guide you through those things is extremely helpful. And that's what you did for me. And so the question of what advice would you give to a driver who's going to just start tomorrow? Again, that's one of those questions. It's like, define start, because starting is not buying a truck and a trailer and you get to go drive and pick up a load tomorrow. It was, in my case, it probably was longer, because I was trying to kind of break free from my previous employer, and there were circumstances there, and I had to continue working for a little while. So the prep time for me was actually drawn out because of that. But you know, there's I can't even remember all the steps. I mean, I had 50 or 60 things on my checklist, and that checklist I kept inserting things, and if I had a question about any of that, I could pick up the phone. If Bryan didn't answer right then, it was calling me back that day or the next day to help me proceed through the process, which is not easy. The process is not easy. From the apportion registration to the purchasing of a trailer in a different state, bringing it back to your own state, getting your registration, securing your insurance, all these things that you have to do in preparation before you actually get in the truck and drive and go get a load. If you don't have somebody that can walk you through that, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So you just answered most of the questions that we had here, and I'm going to leave it that. Okay, here's one. Have we had any moments of conflict or tension?
Well, you mean between you and me?
Yes. Yes.
Not that I'm aware, not that I recall. Nothing significant enough to you know, call my network of people and say, I can't believe he said this, and I can't believe that. You know, I mean, no, there wasn't. I mean, I think that there's things that are said, and there's you know, everything is subject to a person's interpretation, and you're telling a story to somebody else, and you know, maybe they think that you gave me a piece of advice that was bad advice or whatever, but then I look at that and go, I don't really know if that originated through Bryan, you know, because if you watch Bryan's show on a weekly basis, there's a level of consistency there that's important. And I don't believe that you and we haven't really butt heads on anything, because and the reason being is because expectations were set appropriately, not only from myself and what I thought the business would be, but from you. Hey, you know, pre-trips are important. Don't neglect the simple things. So I mean, consistency and has been what's kept us. I mean, I can't think of any.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, and this is what can I do to improve DD214?
Make sure that that's a difficult question, because there's so much of, okay, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Right. So if you take me and decide that I'm going to be a candidate to lease on with you, which is a leap of faith on your part, because that I've come to know. I didn't realize how much of a leap of faith it was when I first started, but I've since learned that when you bring people on and they've leased on with you and they're representing your company,
I'm responsible for you.
It has a lot. Yeah. And every load, you're actually responsible to make sure every load gets from where it's going to where it's supposed to be. Yeah. And if you don't have good people, reliable people that can do that, but you can tell somebody the structure that you have in place is extremely beneficial. I guess if I had to come up with one for room for improvement, well, what you ought to do, Bryan, is create a checklist for each and every state, just in case you get a driver that's out of Florida or out of Texas, because the registration process and everything you have to go through to get there is different for each state. And that can create confusion, because you're on the show and you're talking about how it works in North Carolina, and I'm in Texas. I'm like, well, I really don't care how it works in North Carolina. I need Texas. So then I have to go out and find outside resources to try and walk me through that process. I personally think that's a pretty tall order to have you do that. You know, I don't think it's very practical for you to have a checklist for every state and try to maintain that level of information. That's what I mean when I say, well, you can lead a horse to water, so you can tell me, well, this is what happens in North Carolina. You got to figure it out in Texas. And, It's easy.
Let
It's
me
easy
tell
to
you
make
what we've
mistakes.
done. If I can update you, I'll update you real quick. What we've done now, instead of having the driver pick up their own apportion tags, is we go ahead and get them. It's just easier.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like for each state?
No, we just go ahead and get them North Carolina tags.
All North Carolina.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just easier. I can do it in 30 minutes. It takes, now that Texas, for example, has changed over to their new system, they're 3 to 4 weeks behind.
Right.
And
that's what I experienced. It was a very long lead time, and I didn't know if I was doing something wrong or if that was just the nature of the beast.
It's that new system they went to. It's now nobody knows how to use it.
Right.
So, all right, in closing, and then we'll take questions if we have any questions. I don't know that we do, but if you guys got a question for Mr. Robert, we'll put them up here for you. But in closing, if you could go back and start your career all over again, what would you do differently? What do you think? Over it all, what would you change?
I mean, hindsight, I would probably buy a new truck. I would buy a new truck instead of a used truck. That's one thing I would do different. But that's knowing how much money I had to spend on repairs. And
absolutely. But you don't know what you got to spend on repairs.
You don't know what you're going to spend. And even if you buy a new truck, you're not immune to repairs. I mean,
absolutely. This is why we cut off our age for lease on at 5 years.
Right.
Now, if to come on, you have to have a truck 5 years or newer. We've had guys that come on with older trucks and they just do not hold up. And when I say older, I mean 10 years old. We tried that one time. It just didn't work. Now, we've already done this in other segments about what advice you would give, but do you see yourself mentoring new drivers or expanding your own fleet in the future?
I mean, I do. I understand what it is to be a manager, and I understand what it is to be responsible like you are to make sure every load gets from point A to point B. And when a person does that and they make that leap, they should be compensated for that level of responsibility. And I think that can happen in this business. I need to soul search and find out if that's what I'm prepared to do.
Right.
I like the driving part. I like the physicality of the loading. I think that Hotshot trucking fills a niche market, somewhere between throwing something in the back of a pickup and hauling it from A to B to it needs a semi tractor trailer to haul from A to B. And we fill that gap. And so it keeps things fresh and new, and you get to see a lot of cool places and go into a lot of businesses around. And I'm a student of entrepreneurship, so I really enjoy walking into a business and just looking at their operation and seeing how they're working.
You and I are the same that way. I like that.
Yeah, I really enjoy that. I mean, some of the places I've stayed and you kind of have access. I mean, I have yet to get kicked out of somewhere. And I've stayed places that there is no way the general public would be able to get in here. Mm-hmm. And it's like, you're in here and you're looking around at what's going on. And it's like, this is really neat. And so that's a big perk in the business if you're into that sort of thing. But, when I'm a little fearful that when I make the change, you seem to have done a pretty good job of you're still running loads. And so I
have to. It drives me crazy. I can't stand. Can't stand sitting in the office.
Yeah, and so I'm gonna as you say, let it grow organically. And I didn't really envision myself. I mean, you never know if it's going to last a year or how long things are going to last. I knew going in 90% or whatever the stat is, startup businesses fail. And that's what this is, startup business.
It is.
So I do see, the thing about bringing on new drivers is that it's just like bringing on an employee. It's just like hiring an employee at a company where there's a cost associated with that.
There's a large cost to it that people don't realize, all the steps that have to go on behind the scenes to be within regulation.
Right.
And it takes a good bit of money and a lot of time to bring a driver on.
Yeah. And so you know, that's a cost that you have to endure in order to do that. And then the hard cost of that doesn't even count how much time you have to spend. Some people you might have to spend less time with, some people you might have to spend more time with. And so would I be opposed to mentoring and trying to bring people on and do this? No. I mean, and you have to have faith that at some point in time, your compensation for having done so will be altered to meet that level of responsibility and through some way, shape, or form. And so, you know, unfortunately, I'm not here to volunteer. I wish that I could afford to volunteer all my time to do another thing, you know, I would love to be a volunteer hotshot driver, you know, and just like, I got this.
Great for free.
Yeah.
That's right.
Don't worry about fuel. I'll just haul it, whatever needs to happen. It'd be great. But unfortunately it's business and, or fortunately, however you want to look at it. And so, you know, the only way to increase revenue at the point that I'm at that threshold where if I want to increase revenue, I'm going to have to multiply myself. It's the only way.
Right.
You know,
am I doing anything? And then you double.
Yeah.
And then that's all I did. I mean, that's really all I did. I did it more to help people and help veterans and first responders and into that thing. But it just grew from what it grew to. And I'm very, very happy with it. If it grows more, great. If it doesn't, great. But I'm not pushing anything.
Well, you know, that particular aspect of it, with regard to helping veterans, you know, that's something that's near and dear to me. And I've actually studied it. I've gone to school to study that, and that's something that's most people don't appreciate. Okay, you've got a kid or not even a kid, a young man that is in the military, and maybe he's responsible for a couple $1 million worth of equipment, and he's supervising or I was never in the military, but you know, my dad was, and my grandfather was, and I have a great degree of respect for it. But the point is that when a young man finishes his tour and decides he's going to open up the next chapter of his life, it can be extremely difficult on that person when they were in charge of seemingly a multi-million-dollar operation with heavy equipment and a lot of people. And now they're out here trying to interview, and they're finding it hard to find a job where they're managing anything over $50,000 if they're even in a position to do that.
Right.
And so it's psychologically very difficult on those. So, and Hotshot Trucking is a great venue for those people because they've proven responsibility, and they more than likely have some grasp on and are mechanically inclined. And that what you're doing with regard to that is a huge benefit to them, because if they don't have some place to associate that level of responsibility, it can turn into bad things for them.
Right. Well, you know, Robert, you're a great guy, man. And I am so proud of your success, and you handle situations far better than I handle situations. You've got a great ability to deal with people, and that's a huge gift.
Well, thank you for the kind words, Bryan. I appreciate it.
So as we get ready to see if we have any questions, if you would be kind enough, do we have any questions through there? Robert, how many moving blankets do you keep with you?
Well, I started out with probably 6 and now I have like 12, but they're not
12?
full size. The ones there's a bunch of small ones after I did that one load. I keep like, I think it's 4 to 6 of the heavy ones that you can put on front of steel to,
Yeah.
the front of steel building material. And then I keep some little ones around so that if you have these kind of peaks in whatever you're hauling, you can throw them up on top.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Jay. One more question. We got Kenneth. What do you use to pay yourself? How long did it take for you to start paying yourself? Thank you.
Well, I think the question is like, where does the money come from? I mean,
Yeah.
so basically when you're driving, you're generating gross revenue for your company. And if you lease on with Bryan, which it's a great part of the lease on portion of my business. I never worry about getting paid because Bryan pays me per the agreement and per the loads that I haul. And so you'll have to consult with your CPA. I don't want to give any financial advice, but I mean, you end up paying yourself out of your corporate account and
your cash flow.
Yeah, from your cash flow.
Yeah.
And that's why if you don't generate cash flow if the week that you're home, you're not going to get a paycheck. So you have to have enough funds in your savings account or in your personal checking account to cover yourself for those things.
Now, Kenneth, you need to talk to your accountant. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in there, but you need to talk to your accountant and set up a payroll account and set up something that will pay you a minimum, whatever the minimum amount you need to get paid every week, straight out of there, and they will take the taxes and so forth from there.
Yeah, it's a livable wage.
I think we use ADP for us. Isn't that right, through the account? Isn't it ADP? ADP is what I think we use. But my accountant deals with that. He cuts the checks, or he doesn't cut the check. It's ACH'd into my account every month. I do a one time a month payroll. So that's how we do it. I'm not sure if he's asking you anything or you have anything other than that, Robert.
No, that works for me. I mean, I didn't understand if he was talking about like the software logistically or if he's talking about where the funds come from. So I don't know. I mean,
yeah,
those are things that's another thing that, it's your own business. So you got to set that up for yourself. And, so I pay myself out of the cash flow that comes from the business and make sure that it's done by the rules that the CPA lets me know.
Okay. What you got? Let's see. What used vehicle did you start with? What would you have got if you bought new? Join late if this is already discussed.
Oh, that's all right. It's I bought a 2019 Ram 5500. It's got the 6.7 liter diesel in it, and it's the Isin transmission. And it was based on a bunch of research, and while I've had to fix the truck, I just don't know that there's a better alternative out there. You can do your own research on trucks, talk to your own network. And I've had years ago, I had personal experience with Chevy and Ford, and I just decided to go. I had never previously owned a Ram, but you see a lot of them on the road.
Yeah.
And that kind of is one of those things where it's like, what is everybody doing? And so that was really how I made the decision on that. So I would probably buy a new Ram if I was going to buy a new.
It's just hard to beat that 6.7 Cummins. I mean, that's a 7th or 8th generation 6-cylinder Cummins, and I mean, it's just top of the line. I love mine.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jared. I appreciate it. Anything else? Nothing else? All right, guys. This is probably the longest interview we've ever done. Robert, congratulations.
Well, thanks. I hope that. Yeah, I'll take that as a compliment.
Yeah, there you go. So, All right, Robert, we're going to say goodbye. I
Okay.
appreciate you being here.
You bet.
I'll talk to you later on.
Okay.
And guys, if you need anything, please reach out. We're here to help if we can. We have no further questions. I want to say goodbye real quick to everybody, or hey, everybody. We got Miss Mila and Jay. We got Kenneth Williams, Jared, Alex. Deal compliance is a joke. Let's see. Yeah. So, hey, thanks for everybody that's in the house. Thanks for everybody that's over on YouTube. We totally appreciate it. And, you got to love your family because that's all you got. So if, wait a minute, hang on 1 minute, Robert. I'm going to bring you back to stage.
Okay.
All right. We got this one. We're going to show this. This is for you.
Thanks, Bond. I appreciate it. That's my son-in-law.
All right.
Well,
we're going to jump out of here. We appreciate you, Bond. We'll see you later. All right, guys. Listen, I'm out of here. Like I said, we'll be back next Wednesday. Thanks, Robert. We appreciate you. And if you need anything, reach out. This is Bryan with DD214. Please like, subscribe, hit the little bell for notification. Oscar Luega, guys.